Hi everyone, it's V here from Mingle Co. Today I have a lovely guest. Her name is Patricia Winfield, and me and Patricia met in our events class. Do you want to tell us the story how we met? No, there's not really a story. We
were in the same class and it was lunchtime.
Yeah, and then you heard of what I was doing.
Yeah, someone had said something about
the 40 plus group. Yes,
yeah,
so we're doing
for neurodiversity, because I was realising that I wasn't the only person in class that was neurodiverse, and it was like, I can be a bit honest here.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So let's talk about you at the moment. What stage are you in your life right now?
Well, I'm officially a senior. I've got one of those lovely cards.
Okay.
The main advantage is to be able to get free public transport, can I say? Very good.
Yeah.
But I'm also a student.
Yes.
at TAFE. So I'm...
what do you study? Diploma of Events, right?
Diploma of Events.
Yep.
So I went back to do that because a couple of things. One being that I was kind of feeling at a loose end.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter, who's now 23, had moved to Melbourne to study. I have a husband who I'm a carer for, but he's now getting some NDIS support,
okay,
which gives me more free time than I've had for a lot of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of thinking about myself, so I wasn't sure. So it was the idea to try something different, really.
Mm-hmm.
It was either that or curl up and not do anything. So I thought I better do something.
Yeah. So I asked you to, what would you feel? How would you feel if you came to tell your story? Why did you agree to that?
Because I've often felt not in place in society. I've always kind of felt like, and I don't know if it's an outsider. I've just felt like I've never really fitted in. I've had to kind of accommodate or hide the way I am really, so that I kind of appear to be like everyone else, or what we would refer to as normal. And that's pretty much since I was a child. I was very kind of always doing too much, or and getting under people's feet or whatever. But also being brought up in quite a religious family, it was all very much all you had to learn to be very good. So I think over the years I learnt to kind of at least appear to be normal, but it did take a bit of a toll on...
So you were masking, what we call now masking.
I guess so, yeah. I was trying to appear normal and kind of go, okay, so it's not normal for someone to jump from this topic to another topic, so I'd try to...
Yeah. Would you get told off about those things? Is that how you learnt, or you just picked it up by studying?
No, I'd be told to.
Yeah. You've been told to, yeah.
I'm regularly told to.
Yeah. And at what age did you kind of feel that you didn't fit in or different, yeah?
Yeah, probably primary school. I mean, look, I grew up feeling different from primary school, partly because I had quite, I suppose, a disrupted childhood. In that my parents were in and out of psychiatric hospitals, and so...
Both of them? Both
yes.
of your parents? Yeah.
Yeah. And so it would often get kind of fostered out amongst relatives initially.
Yeah.
So it was all a bit... you kind of knew that most other people didn't have that.
Okay.
If you know what I mean. So you kind of knew we weren't your average family, but we kind of managed to... it was never talked about.
Yeah.
It was like, mum's not well.
Yeah. That's how you knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And so, but I kind of realised or became aware, because I've got older sisters, and I don't know, I can't remember exactly when I became aware, maybe in my teens, that actually my mum had been told she should be sterilised. And so therefore I shouldn't really have been born, which was a bit of a weird thing to get your head around at first. I mean, my initial reaction was, well, I'm bloody glad she didn't do what she was told.
Yeah, yeah. How did you feel for your mum at that time?
I felt really awful for her, yeah. And, you know, look, my mum, she's died now, but she lived until, I don't know, 90, 91 or something. So she lived a good long life. Yeah. And she did a huge amounts of things. It's just that she had a lot of stuff to struggle with.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. I mean, I have to say I've got one child. She raised 7, for God's sakes.
Were you the middle child?
I was.
Yeah, so you're one of the middle.
Yeah, I was number 4.
Number 4. So how was that for you in between?
Well, you kind of felt you didn't really, again, it was like you weren't part of the older group, but you weren't part of the younger group. There was a lot of dissension, I think, in my childhood. A combination of either being very, very close as a family or really, really going for each other's throats. Yeah. But again...
Whose family doesn't fight.
I've kind of gotten of an age where I realise that's actually really normal.
Yes, yeah.
It's just that people don't talk about it.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, overall, it's that people don't talk about a lot of things which actually are quite normal. Where one of the things I did do over the years is I did a bit of study in media studies. And one of the things that really hit me when I was studying that was how much our perceptions of what is acceptable and normal is influenced by the media that's around us. So when I was growing up, it was television and the papers and magazines, and the way in which different people are depicted really affects the way in which you feel about it. So there were never any images of families kind of struggling but still getting through it or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, getting by or still being family.
So it was something that you felt very much you could never really talk about.
Yeah.
And certainly you never told someone that you had had a breakdown or mental health. You would say, "Oh, I've been a bit unwell."
So just for people to know, were you diagnosed late in your life?
I was in my early to mid-20s when I got diagnosed.
And you were here already? So, because Patricia is from England, right?
No, I'm from Adelaide.
Oh, so you were born in Adelaide?
I was born in the Barossa Valley, grew up in Adelaide, lived in Adelaide and did my science degree.
Okay.
Because I had wanted to work in the arts. Well, I have a very weird thing in that I really like both the arts and science simultaneously.
Yeah.
So I couldn't really make my mind up, like, do I want to be a doctor or do I want to work in the arts? So but I got told when I was quite young, like about 15, that I wouldn't work behind the scenes. I didn't want to work on stage. I at school, when we had drama classes, I'd be the one going, "Oh, don't you need someone to move chairs?" I'm sure you need someone behind the scenes to do this.
I'll move them.
Yeah. So I've never really liked being on stage, but I've definitely wanted to be part of that whole performance or putting on things.
Yeah.
But I was usually behind the scenes thing. So that's what I wanted to do, but got told fairly categorically in the late 70s that I'd never work in backstage in theatre because I was a girl. Wow. And I was a small girl at that too. And so went off to do my science.
So did that discourage you, what they said to you?
Oh, God, yes.
So you were discouraged?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Up until then, I'd gotten really excited. I'd gotten involved in some community arts projects it used to be called Theatre 62, down on Donald Bradman Drive.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's called Star Theatre. Anyway, I'd gotten involved, again, I was the only female, but I thought, well, whatever. But I remember being so proud. I'd gone on a youth workshop in technical stuff and made my very first extension cable.
Wow.
Where I'd done all the cable, and so part of me thought, no, this is, something I wanted to do. But yes, so when I got told, because, this was at the festival centre, so when I got told by people working there, it was a bit like, okay.
Very discouraging, yeah.
So
So then you went to study
science.
Yeah.
Because I thought, oh well, that's my other field. And but then I did that, and that was great. I was doing kind of biochem, microimmunology, and stuff, and doing quite well with that, and considering going into research type of thing. But I was never someone who could stay sitting in a lab, watching, being really focused on stuff. I've always kind of been up and about and whatever.
Yeah.
So there was a...
So that part of the job role was hard for you? Okay.
Definitely. I like the thinking about it and the complexities, but there were other things that I just went, oh, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
And then I got also told... so then I'd gotten involved in student theatre quite a lot, and community theatre, and I applied and got into... a kind of course in Melbourne. At that stage, there wasn't really anywhere you could go and study just technical theatre, except a place called NIDA, and I think they took like 12 people a year. So, but I got into a similar one in Melbourne at a place called Rusden. I think they just opened VCA, and so I went there. So. I was at that timing point of like, do I stay doing what this is? And I'm, no reason to give up the science. I was getting high distinctions. I was doing really well. I did have a few of my lecturers, again, not fitting into the normal mould, who did come to me and try to dissuade me from staying in science, saying that I wasn't a real scientist.
Wow.
This is in the early 80s, and I had been agitating, I guess, about my concerns to do with CFCs causing holes in the ozone layer, which back then was just a fantasy of us, some of us loony left-wing greenies.
Yeah. Wow.
And I just, but I guess by this point I'd gotten a bit older and a little bit more resilient, and I'd gone, I don't care. Yeah, maybe I am a loony left-wing greenie. Anyway, I'm off to go do theatre, but, you may not see the end of me yet.
Yeah.
So then I shifted careers again completely, really. Did lie to my mother.
You did what, sorry?
I did lie to my mum.
Oh, okay. What did you say to her?
Well, I let her think it was a 1-year course.
Yeah.
As opposed to a 4-year degree.
Yeah. Wow.
But by the time I'd been over there a year, it was like, and my dad was quite supportive of it all, and and I guess Mum knew, people, your children do what they do.
Yeah.
And then from that, I didn't finish doing that training because I realised I wanted to actually. There was an opportunity, so I started working. This is about 8 years after I'd been told I wouldn't. I started working backstage at the Victorian Arts Centre as a theatre technician.
Oh, okay. Wow. So you're back there again.
So I was back there doing what I was told I'd never do.
Yeah.
When I was 15.
Yeah.
Has made me always a little bit careful about who I might be around doing work experience because,
just because of
my own personal experience of how often people don't realise what kind of an impact their voice, what they can say can have on people. And we all can do things and say things inappropriately. Yeah. Sometimes I'd like to hope because we're not aware of it.
But to a 15-year-old, that's very discouraging.
Yeah. Look, back then, what they said was almost certainly true. When I worked at the, I've regularly been the only female backstage.
Yeah.
In the whole crew.
Yeah. But now you could find a lot more.
Now it's a lot different. Oh yeah, no, it's obviously moved on.
Yeah.
So I did. So then I started working, doing Australian ballet, and having a wonderful time.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. In lighting.
So where do you get to the diagnosis where they diagnose you or misdiagnose?
I was having such a great time doing all the theatre and art stuff that I was kind of working ridiculous hours. So I think we worked out. I basically had a breakdown in 1988.
How old were you then?
I would have been 24.
So how was, when you say breakdown, how was that? What does a breakdown look for you? Look
Well,
like then for you at least?
For me, I hadn't slept for about 3 days.
Oh my God.
Or 4 days.
Okay.
I'd been working, we had our opening night of a show on New Year's, I can't remember, anyway, it was around New Year, but I mean, I was working crazy hours, and unsurprising, I was also partying a bit as well.
Yeah, having fun. Yeah.
Having fun.
Yeah.
So yes, and I basically, so I didn't sleep for ages, I kind of just kept going. I then started probably not making much sense to people. I was, and so I ended up being hospitalised.
Wow.
Some friends, I had some good friends, and they kind of said, look, we think you need a break.
Yeah.
I'd do things like I'd walk through the night to go see the tall ships arrive.
Oh, okay, okay.
So, you know, I'd get, anyway, and it was in the hospital, it wasn't a hotel, despite what people said to me. They went, oh, it's like a hotel. And I went, oh, that sounds good. Except it wasn't like a hotel.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't lock your doors in hotels, whereas they certainly lock the doors in a psychiatric hospital.
And how was that experience for you? Was that the first time you were in the hospital?
Well, it was the first time I was in a psych hospital as a patient.
Sorry, yeah.
Not the first time I'd been in a psych hospital, because I'd been and visited both my mum and my dad in them.
Yeah, yeah.
And by the time I got diagnosed, a number of my other sisters had also had kind of what was referred to as breakdowns. And so we all got diagnosed, as my mum was diagnosed in the 60s or 70s, with what was then called manic depression.
Okay, yeah.
Which I think is now bipolar, and now there's even different categories.
Yeah.
So I kind of took a while to recover from that. It's, I think if you've not, you can have a certain amount of empathy for people recovering from mental health. Anyone could. But I think it's especially if you've actually been hospitalised for that yourself, you understand more perhaps the struggle it takes.
Yeah, yeah, being on the other side.
To be able to recover from it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I was a high-level techie who was used to wiring up complicated technical equipment. And when I first came out of hospital, I could barely know how to turn on sound system.
Wow.
To play a record.
So what happened then? Like what?
Well, you just had to regain your confidence very slowly.
Oh, wow. So it affected your self-esteem?
Yes.
Being in there?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Both self-esteem but also lack of confidence. And I think it comes to partly to the thing of, because you're vaguely aware that your brain is not functioning properly, you're never quite sure, can you trust your brain again?
Okay.
I'm wondering if
Interesting.
Anyway, so I do remember that being a big thing, and it took quite a while to recover. But I did have a very, very supportive, the Arts Centre were very supportive, I think, and did a lot to what they could. I kind of came back part-time, you know, and they made a lot of effort to try and provide space to be able to unwind, because what was identified was it was such a full-on place the whole time that it was important to be able to provide those, what's the word? Chill out's not the right word for it. Like a de-stressing, or a place that you can go and just...
Yeah, it's like a sensory room or something.
Like a sensory room, except you probably wouldn't call it that.
No.
But anyway, it's funny how terminology...
how
terminology changes people's opinions about how you view things. So I got diagnosed, and that's when I had my next kind of life identity, because I've realised through a lot of my life it's trying to work out what my identity is. Who am I, what am I, you know. That the psychiatrist told me that I should also get sterilised, because I'd been diagnosed with manic depression, it was called then. And I should leave working in the arts.
Wow. This was by a female
No, this was
psychiatrist
by
or
a male doctor.
Yeah.
Saying, you should be considering these things, whatever. And when you come out of hospital, and again, it will be different for different people, but I certainly remember you kind of have this blind faith that people are actually helping you, hopefully.
Yeah.
And because you've lost faith in your ability to necessarily be sane,
yeah,
by definition, having been diagnosed insane,
yeah,
it made you, how do I describe it? So, you'd go, oh, well, okay, that's what I'm meant to do. So, luckily, though, I had the general manager of the Arts Centre at the time, an amazing lady called Sue Natras, who was actually one of Australia's first full-on technician, female technicians. So she was great. She was a bit of a mentor for me.
Okay.
Because at the time I was the only female in the crew.
Yeah.
So I guess the Arts Centre acknowledged immediately that might be an idea to maybe get a few more.
Yeah.
So I had...
That's awesome, yeah.
So they really took that on board. But also I spoke to Sue about, I said, well, look, they're telling me I should get sterilised. And they're saying I shouldn't work in the theatre anymore. Thank goodness she looked at me, and she had a reputation for being a straight speaker. She just looked at me, she said, no, I think the solution is we find you a new psychiatrist.
Okay, yeah.
Because that one obviously does not know what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
And so basically they found me another psychiatrist who kind of basically took a completely different view from it all and said, look, you don't necessarily have to be taking, medication is a really weird topic to do with mental health, and I think it's beyond the scope of our talk today. But I was given an opportunity to realise that actually I could have a functioning life with bipolar. Wasn't always going to be easy, but certainly, there's a way forward. You can learn to manage it with support, and that was really grateful. And I mean, I've been someone who's was originally taking lithium and stelazine and a pile of different. I'm not sure what the category these days of those drugs are, but anyway, but ended up stopping taking them, and I've used a slightly different route. And one of the things of doing a lot of, I suppose you call talking therapies, but also I strongly suspect that because over the years I've had a strong involvement in the arts, and I really believe that the arts has got a amazing capacity for almost anyone to help build mental health, strength, sense of identity, sense of worth. In fact, there was on the ABC. There's an article about how music can certainly help to calibrate people's minds. Yeah. So, and that's something I've always been interested in as well. So, I think that's kind of helped me to stay stable. So, I've only actually, touch wood, only ever had one actual hospital admission in my life, which is great. It doesn't mean I've not been affected, but I've not got to the point where I've had to be hospitalised. Okay.
So since then you haven't really been on medication?
I stopped taking. Well, I do take some medication. Instead I've been taking for a while I was out without any. And I mean, look, it's hard looking. You look back at your life and you go, oh, I was probably a bit all over the place during that period, and that was a bit roller coastery. But so I have been taking a kind of, I'm not really sure what the category is, but something called Prozac, fluoxetine. That seems to work for me. And just regular talking, trying to have a regular person to talk to, and then trying to listen to myself, what makes me feel good and what doesn't make me feel good, and trying to minimise the amount of not feeling good. Activities.
Yeah.
So
that works. So that works. But you so that, And how long did it take you to get to that place where you're like, okay, if you look back in time, I was struggling back there. How long did it take you to go, oh, let's say in my 30s or 40s, I realised this is what doesn't work for me?
Well, I suppose I stopped taking the lithium and in my mid-20s.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think by the time I was 30, I had stopped taking what's considered the gold standard or a gold standard for bipolar. And then, because also, maybe because I'd spent a number of years doing science, and I kind of did very similar, I was doing a lot of subjects along with medical students, and I just really, I became aware of how sometimes misdiagnosis happens, or people just, they kind of, I didn't have a lot of trust, certainly in pharmacology, but felt that there must be other ways of dealing with this.
Yeah.
Plus, I also kind of knew, possibly from childhood, that our society is inherently kind of focused on certain things. I remember for years going, it's not fair that I was born a girl.
Yeah, I do remember having that experience. It's like I thought it would be easier to be a boy.
Yeah, you could say, but the boys get this and the boys get that. How come that's not? This is not fair.
Yeah.
And being told that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yes.
And you were
it's
like
a different society.
Yeah.
Back then.
Yeah.
The culture was different as well.
Well, it was very much you had to kind of fit in to be able to get anywhere, and if not, you were considered a failure, or making what's the word that sometimes people use, or making bad life choices. And you sit there going, yeah, but what am I making a choice about and for, and how much of it is a choice, or how much of it is just survival? It's what I need to do to be able to continue to function.
Yeah. So you still have a good support system. You have a good support system at the moment?
Reasonable, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, because
it would be hard as well, because you're also a carer.
Yeah.
So you have to also look after yourself.
Yeah. So I suppose I kind of realised there was going to be a glass ceiling in Australia. So in the late 80s, 89, I went travelling. And ended up in England, in London, and basically continued working in theatre for a number of years, and that was great fun. I had a really good time overall, but partly because what I've kind of worked out is that I'm more good at kind of doing project work, or something which might have a build up to a certain point, and then there's an end, and then there's a break, rather than the same every day type of thing. So, and that's where the arts for me kind of worked in quite well. And it meant that if I was not feeling up for it, it was fine, you just wouldn't take on a certain contract, you wouldn't put yourself out there for work. Financially not great. So, there's that. But again, I kind of thought, well, I think there's more to life than
just money.
Yeah. Because I'd seen so many people with money who were terribly unhappy that you just thought, well, it doesn't seem to be working there, so maybe there's another way.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and then while I was working, and then I pretty much thought I was going to be, I suppose, one of the things I decided when I was young was I was never going to get married, I was never going to have kids, because it was just, a mug's life being...
And at that time, when you were still, younger and getting to know yourself, how were you navigating relationships then?
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Very difficult. I mean, for a start, partly I wasn't, because it was still unusual to be a female techie in England and parts of Europe. I got so regularly would be asked at the start of day by whoever coming into a venue, oh, where's your boyfriend?
Oh, wow, okay.
and me looking, it's at 8 o'clock in the morning, as if anyone would be in with their boyfriend somewhere at 8 o'clock in the bloody morning. I don't know. But I'd be looking at them going, oh. Depending on my mood, I'd either say, oh, God, I've lost him. If I was in a positive, silly mood.
Yeah.
Going, I hope you cook,
Yeah.
Or else I just say, I ain't got a boyfriend. Who are you looking for? If you're looking for the technician, you're looking at her.
Yeah. Wow.
So I guess over the years I really developed a thing of not having a boyfriend, I guess, in a way. Or certainly not having anyone that was obvious. Because, I'd had people tell me I only got to work because I'd obviously must have slept with the boss.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, regularly got told.
Sounds like a very sexist culture. Very sexist.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got... I don't want to... Look, it was a very different time and field to be working in, I think. But, I can remember when I first started working at... I'm trying to not mention names, because I don't, one or two bad apples doesn't make a whole basket of fruit crap.
Yeah.
But let's just say that I remember one time going to work in a multi-venue that had air conditioning, and I lost my voice as a reaction to the air quality. And the joke went round the whole centre that basically I got the nickname Deep Throat.
Oh my God.
Because that was obviously how I had lost my voice.
That's terrible.
And I've had to work. This was while I was working. This is while I'm on stage, while we're rigging lights, while I'm patching.
Did that have
You just had to ignore it. You just had to ignore it, otherwise you would not continue.
Wow.
I did get to a point at some times where I would be able to get certain things. There was one time when, it's now Opera Australia, but anyway, way back when it was Australian Opera, I did manage to get my messages. Because, it's hot, you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt, just like the guys are. And we're carrying equipment, big lanterns across the stage for whatever. And I don't know, I got tired of having my bottom pinched.
Wow.
Now, it's one thing for that to happen when you're sitting in a pub after work.
Yeah.
Okay, back in those days.
Yeah.
But I'm walking and I'm in the work and look, and I'd be going, look guys, no, it's not fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd finally... shit hit the fan.
Yeah.
I just thought, you fuckers. Sorry, excuse them. I'll have to edit that bit. I just thought, you fucker. And so I've got a reasonably accurate back kick.
Oh.
So shall we say the responsible person was seen rolling around the floor holding their crutch, and I just looked at them and went, you're bloody lucky I didn't have my spurs on my boots. Or you'd be going to hospital. I said, we're working.
Yeah.
Okay?
Wow.
Now, I did gather that got round.
Yeah.
No one pinched my bum after that.
Oh, really?
No.
That's amazing. That's a great story.
Everyone suddenly went, oh, Trisha might actually just...
kick your ass.
I mean, well, it's hard to know. I mean, look, it was a very, very different, we're talking the mid-80s here, so,
Yeah. Were you afraid that you would lose your job after that? Did it occur to you that I might get sacked?
Actually, no, it didn't.
Okay.
I kind of did look at it. I think they knew that...
Or did they know it was happening?
I think I did. I think HR knew that there were, issues. But there was just not very many female techies about. It's just, so...
what a different world.
Yeah.
Just seems
I did that and then I went, I'm going off for a coffee. I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah.
And everyone just went, oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're sounds like you're through all of that stuff that you went, you're very resilient, or became
Well,
resilient.
you become resilient.
Yeah.
Because it's either that or you give up.
Yeah.
And the ability to be resilient varies over time. So whilst I've done that when I was in my mid-20s, I guess, there'd be time like later on after I met my husband and, I'm looking after, I've got a daughter, because of course, despite being told I should get sterilised, I suddenly found myself at 39 pregnant, going, what the hell?
Yeah.
And kind of struggling with all of that. And
so you struggled after you had your child?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I, again, did have a few things with, and I can kind of see it from the NHS's viewpoint, in that they need to make sure that, there's kind of protection for the children and stuff. But it was really weird because when I first had my first midwife's appointment, apart from the fact that I had a nun sitting in front of me, which was a bit freaky, she kind of basically, it was suggested that I shouldn't really mention about having mental health as an issue in my life, because then they would take my child from me.
Okay.
Which was a bit like, what?
Yeah. Where now you can get those support.
Well, actually, the midwife was telling the wrong thing. They were on secondment from somewhere in Africa, and it was but enough to trigger me to walk out of my midwife appointment.
Yeah.
Instantly going, that's it, I'm not talking to you guys anymore.
Yeah.
But spoke to the reception at my GP surgery and just said, look, if this is what you offer as midwifery service, I will have my child outside of the NHS.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did. I spoke to someone and I explained my concerns. I said, look, and that's when I actually did get offered support, and so I managed to have a home birth and various things.
Wow.
But yeah, it's difficult because if you've grown up partly thinking you probably shouldn't have children, but then part of me thought, well, no, because, my mum, I've got a whole range of sisters who've all done really amazing things over their lives. So, that wouldn't have happened if they'd been sterilised. So, and also, one of the things I was involved in before I had Ella was working in disability arts. And, again, that was about just enabling people to see people who are like themselves.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I first started to kind of accept or feel okay about mentioning to people that I have a mental health issue, or whatever you refer to it as, was when I was working at Edinburgh Festival in the early 90s. And managed to speak to Spike Milligan's daughter. And Spike Milligan was my dad's absolute favourite comedian, and was very well known and respected and stuff. And he was very entertaining and quite funny. But I was talking to his daughter, who was his stage manager, and we got chatting about things. And then she talked to me. She said, "Well, you know that my dad has bipolar," and it was like a veil came down, and suddenly it was like, "Oh my God! You mean you can have a successful life and have this?"
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that's when I started the times thinking about how it's not just what is happening to you, but also what's around you, and how supported you are or not, as to whether or not you can have.
Yeah. Yeah. If anyone is going through the same thing that you have, or is struggling at the moment, what would you say to them?
Reach out for help if you can. Try to take it. Every time I say some of these things, I just think I'm like my mother.
Really?
Yeah. Coming
That's
out
okay.
with it. But things like taking things a day at a time, or an hour, just allowing yourself time to think through it. Certainly calling out for help and support. Taking
Well, that's
a
a
rest.
good start. That's a
Taking
good
a
start,
rest if you need it. Not,
pushing through.
Pushing, yeah. When I was, because, you know, one of the other things I did was I've retrained and went back and became a science teacher, followed up my with my science degree. Funnily enough, of course, discovered 20 years later that, oh my God, yes, actually we are concerned about CFCs and we are concerned about global warming.
Yeah.
And so what I got told at Adelaide Uni back in the early 80s was complete bunkum.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's suddenly like, oh, it's in the textbooks.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I'm not that crazy then.
Yeah.
But going back to study then as a mum, and also I was a carer for my husband, to do my PGCE was really, really hard. And I actually did become unwell. Didn't have to be hospitalised, but I did become unwell. And so basically I had to have, I guess, the courage to be able to tell
that you can't continue, or you
I can't
pause,
and just go, I'm going to have to stop, guys.
Yeah.
I'm not giving up, but I'm just going to have to
break.
stop. I'm going to have to break. I'm going to have a
slow down, reset.
reset. And then I did and think, is this what I do? I want to continue to do with it. It turned out that yes, I did want to, and I managed to get the support around me to be able to continue, and I managed to finish. I then discovered I was allergic to school, just like like normal school.
Yeah, yeah.
With a question mark, you know, the inverted commas. Your standard grammar school was not my working environment, I soon discovered. But working with kids in care, working with kids on the street, I was great with.
Yeah.
So I ended up teaching those kids maths and science instead.
Oh, that's amazing.
In a kind of virtual school. And trying to help them realise that, okay, they're going through a bit of a tough time. A lot of them were, you know, they were in care.
And I suppose that's where you could have that empathy for. Yeah.
Well, exactly.
And relate a little bit,
And, you know, and I did, because I was, you know, I'm not sure what it's like over here, but I did have some supervision, thank goodness, with some educational psychologists, and so I'd be regularly, because it was very much like outreach work. I was literally, you know, I'd find whereabouts they were in West London.
Wow.
Meet them. And go, hi, I got my laptop. Let's go have a coffee.
Yeah.
They'd be under 15, so I couldn't buy them coffee. I could buy them a hot chocolate.
Yeah.
I said, I'll buy you a hot chocolate, and let's sit down and see if we can get some work done.
Wow.
And sometimes I would disclose, I suppose you'd refer to it as my background, because the kids would, you know, partly to, I suppose, to let them, because a number of these people, they're very, you know, they've been really...
So they're vulnerable kids, so what you're saying is they don't trust everyone?
They don't trust a lot of people.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
a number
takes
of these
some
kids,
time.
I mean, some of these kids, they've been, you know, they've already been in youth offending prison.
Yeah.
By the time they're 15, they've been in a youth psych unit.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they haven't been to school for 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could kind of say they're feral, which is not a good word, but that's, you know, as a black joke, it's referred to. But actually they were just very frightened and just didn't really know, and so it was like, I guess, how I would try to view them. I'd say, look guys, I know it seems weird, but I can't, and so I'd give them perhaps bits, obviously checking with ed psychologists that it's okay to do this, but saying, look, I think it might help them to see someone of my age identify in some of the challenges that they might be feeling, and saying, look, I grew up with social workers around my family. I grew up with this, and I'm not saying it's easy, but, you know, step at a time. And then another analogy I like to give them is it's like the kids are kind of feeling like they're walking along a brick wall, and they're constantly wanting to break down the brick wall because they feel, you know. And I said, look, you could keep trying to hit the brick wall, but can I tell you, you're the one who's going to get the headache. The brick wall's going to be fine. But if you come with me, and I suppose what I was trying to get across to them is, if you come and learn a bit of maths and English with me, I can take you to where there's a door.
And then
and you don't actually have to break the door down either, because if you hit with me long enough, I'll show you how to use a key.
Yeah.
And you can open the door and you can just walk through to the other side.
Wow. So did that sort of analogy would help?
It's for some of them, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, or sometimes I would be walking. I had another analogy with them, because I find using visual descriptive metaphors quite helpful sometimes. Is a bit like walking along a cliff face. I don't know if you probably don't much know Southern England, but so walking along the limestone cliffs in the fog, and like a lot of kids or a lot of things, they always want to push the boundaries. And so sometimes I'd also see my role as I'm walking along, making sure that if you're going to push the boundary, you're not pushing it too far. Or even maybe, let's come a little bit further away. So it's walking with people along, it's trying to walk alongside people.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until they're ready to kind of come away and accept that the fence is there, because actually going the other side's not a good idea.
Yeah, no. Just to keep them safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Now let's talk about, because at the moment you're part of a group called Dancing Monsters.
Yes.
Okay. What is? Tell me about that.
Well, it's actually a Port Adelaide base.
Port Adelaide. Yeah.
Based in Port Adelaide. It's a kind of loose connection. It kind of grown out of a kind of a community drumming. Exercise, which is a kind of free form drumming. It's not like. It's a kind of I'm not really sure how you describe it, but anyway. So
there's drumming involved.
Drumming involved, but it's not like a drum kit.
Yeah.
It's all sorts of things making a sound. But then also sometimes there'll be other musicians might come and join. But you don't. I guess the key thing to say is that you don't have to be a musician to be involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a musician. I play the washboard.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wow.
Just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
So it kind of grew out of that into something which is about, I suppose, again, maybe looking at identity, but Dancing Monsters was this idea of ethereal beasts. Dressing up as monsters has got a long history in all parts of different cultures around the world. Often, again, I suspect is in the arts, helping or allowing an expression that is not acceptable within your kind of standard framework, but within an artistic or a lot of folklore activities. Anyway,
do you get together every month or every?
We do regularly. There's been one on the last day of the Fringe.
Okay.
Down in Port Adelaide, and it's a kind of a parade, and people just dress up as whatever kind of monsters.
Okay.
So and not necessarily, because we've also sometimes we might sit around while if we're making workshops or we're talking about the parade, but it's not necessarily that these are scary monsters. They're just different.
Yeah.
So.
So if anyone wants to check it out, they'll go. Do you have a Facebook page?
There's a Facebook page
called
the
Dancing Monsters.
Dancing Monsters, yeah.
Okay.
And we just finished doing a parade at the Port Adelaide Christmas Parade.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
and stuff. So there's probably some stuff up on.
Yeah. So awesome.
On the social medias about that, and it's really I'm not sure. We might be hopefully doing some workshops where people, if they've not done it before, can come along and get a feel.
So they could come before the.
Yeah, they'd be. Well, we've done sometimes in the past. We're hoping to be able to run some workshops, so people can come, because not everyone's used to making a monster.
Yeah. Yeah.
But look, we've had monsters which is someone's just done a paper bag over their head with the crazy things attached.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
what does your monster represent?
My monster. Which is a kind of white. It basically, someone described it as a swirling dervish.
Dervish, yeah.
Because but it's torn Hillcrest Hospital bed sheets. When I was making this particular monster, I was dealing with my younger sister going through a lot of trauma connected to hospital stays. And I guess this was my way of kind of dealing with, okay, partly my sense of frustration and whatever. But also because, and so that became hilly. And the head is a kind of a tangle of old weeds pulled out of the semaphore dunes.
Okay, cool.
But the thing with Hilly is, and Hilly just likes to dance and move. Yeah, looks a bit different. He just likes to dance and move. But doesn't necessarily want to be scary, I guess, is one of the things I want.
It's more like an expressive, just an expressive dance. Or,
and a way of being able to, and responding to atmosphere. So when we've done the parades, I usually I think I could possibly come across, hopefully, as generally a happy monster, which is kind of counter to what people always think of.
Of monsters,
Of monsters. But also that but often we're scared of monsters, but do we need to be scared of monsters? And what about the monsters that are inside of us, in our heads or whatever? So there's been a lot of stuff. It's been running for a few years. It's actually run by a guy called Daniel Havey, who, not running, kind of led. We're kind of an ensemble. We're still trying to work out how that bit works, but without anyone feeling left out. But yeah.
Awesome.
So mostly doing that, and then just hopefully I'm hoping to be able to get back into doing a bit of behind the scenes technical work that will fit in with my caring role with my husband and enjoying the fact that my daughter, who's now 23 and about to, the one I wasn't meant to have, is now 23 and has graduated with high distinctions in a degree in psychology.
That's amazing. I'm sure you're a proud mum.
I'm a proud mum.
Wow.
And she's, I know it's been hard for her as well. But again, I suppose, it's like, well, we just have to take it as it comes. And, it's been a struggle. You think you're going to do something else, and then you end up doing something different again. So I think that's the case for more of us than most people like to admit.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Patricia.
No problem.
I say that you have a colourful life, and I love that about you. Because you've done so many different things, and you have so much passion, and I'm sure you've made some contributions to even sometimes the little bits, like even helping those children, like that. Sometimes someone's made an impact in your life, hopefully for good, and you never forget them. And hopefully,
because when I was growing up and feeling totally lost as a child and as a teenager, there were adults around me who were there to listen to me and support me. So, I guess I felt like, one less person having to go through that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's amazing. So thank you so much for your time and for sharing your life with us.
No problem.
Thank you so much. Thank you.